Look at this beautiful pink dress. There's so many lovely details here. The fit is spot on. Super excited to share this little masterpiece. Hi sewing friends, my name is Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today is about sewing a beautiful dress. The Comillas dress is a brand new pattern at Itch to Stitch. It's so beautiful. The neckline of this dress is rounded and it's finished with a narrow binding. And then in the center front you have a placket. Easy to sew placket because you sew it on both sides and overlap it, but it reaches the whole bottom of the bodice. This bodice doesn't reach the waist. It goes underneath the bust a little bit lower. I love that. Then there's a seam that unites the bodice to the first tee of the skirt. On that skirt piece, there's a little facing that you put on the inside where you sew some casings and you have an elastic bring it all in. So the bottom of that elasticated section is actually at my natural waist. After that first tee, you have a second tee that's slightly gathered. If you just choose those two tees, the dress will end up around the knee. You can do a third tee and then you have a longer dress. Of course, it's not hard to know that I'm doing the two tees. The shoulder seams are slightly in. A little narrower, not super narrow, but a little further in than the shoulder joint. And then on there we have this beautiful sleeve with a gathered sleeve cap, regular sleeve over here, short sleeves. Such a beautiful dress. Not that hard to sew, although a little lengthy in some aspects, but very worth it because the fit is amazing and it's so unique. Absolutely love it. Now this placket is open. There's no buttonholes, nothing like that. And at the very end, you try it on. You see what type of coverage you want. And then you sew a little rectangle there. Because the Comillas dress is a brand new pattern at Itch to Stitch, it's going to have a release sale for a week, 20% off. You don't need any special code, nothing like that. It's already going to show up there on the website. And this runs through next Wednesday, the 24th of July. I'm going to show you some really fun aspects here of how you can put it together. It's a really fun sew. If you click on my link, end up purchasing, I do receive a small commission back. That is one of the ways I make an income creating all this helpful content that's free for you to watch here on YouTube. So if you use my link, helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. For this one, I would say light to medium weight fabrics are going to work the best. And now, because we have this elasticated waist section here, I would say that using structured fabrics is going to be okay, and that is my choice. I usually want flowy fabrics when I have gathering features on a pattern, but because this bodice is close to the waist, I'm okay with using a more structured fabric. If this was a bodice that was sort of loose and then you had gathers, and it was a boxier type of fit, then I would be against using a structured fabric for the gathers. But with this one, I think it's okay. Cotton lawn, chambray, a super light denim, linen, a cotton linen blend, a linen rayon blend. And then if you do want to use something flowy, then you have rayon. I think the light weave 100% rayon would be harder to work with though, with all the details. I would try to find rayon twill, maybe a tencel twill, although I'm saying it's going to be harder to work with these flowier types of fabrics than with the structured ones. So for mine, I have a linen cotton blend, pretty loose weave, beautiful hot pink, amazing. I've had this fabric for about 2 years, and as soon as I saw the liner, that image of the pink dress just came to my mind and I knew exactly what fabric I was going to use. I didn't have to think or ponder or waste time this time, because there's other times where it does take me a long time to figure out what fabric I'm going to use. It wasn't like that this time. I was pretty sure. You do need a small amount of fusible interfacing and 1/4 inch elastic because that's what goes inside the waist. There's 3 little casings in there, so 3 times the amount of your waist, that's how much you need. Sizing goes from 00 to 40 US up to a 62 inch hip. There's a regular bust and a full bust front option. Itch to Stitch has a cutoff at 3 inches, so when you measure your high bust and your full bust, if the difference is from 0 to 3, you can use the regular bust. If you measure 3, 4, 5, 6, the full bust is going to fit you better. Now, because I'm at the cutoff there and I've been sewing this brand for so long, I know that the full bust option fits me much better than the regular bust option. So that is what I use for Itch to Stitch. You're going to have around 4 to 5 inches of positive ease around the bust area. At the waist, it's a lot. It's like 12 inches, 10, 12 inches. But it's not actually that because you need that ease to bring it all in with the elastic casing, those 3 little casings we have there. But it can be quite forgiving. There's quite a bit of leeway there for your waist. And then because the skirt is a little wider and flowier, we have around 9 inches of positive ease at the hip area. So I would suggest you just choose your size based on the body measurement chart and you will be absolutely fine. Don't try to size up or size down. You might get away with not having to blend a size out at the waist. If your waist is a size larger than your bust or your hips, I think you could get away with sewing a straight size if your bust and your hips are the same size. But you can always blend, and there's always a good instruction in the pattern that shows you with little diagrams how to blend sizes if you have to multi-size. In my case, I did have to multi-size, but it was super easy for me to do it. I chose the 10 full bust option for all of this area, the neckline, the armhole, the bust. Then on the bodice, I blended out to a 12, and then the skirt pieces are at size 12 as well to match the bodice seam, and then blending out to a 14 hip. So 10, 12, 14. That is the way that my measurements fit in here. Very easy. I just had to print 3 sizes. You know, there's layers, so you can print how many sizes you want. Fitting adjustments, I lengthened my bodice by 5/8 of an inch all the way around, front and back. This is just me being a little taller. I do know this brand very well, and for most bodices I've had to lengthen a little bit. So shorten and lengthen line, it's there. Very easy, just spread apart. I added the 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and I'm very happy I did because it fit perfectly. Sometimes I don't do a test garment because I know the brand and I know the block so well, and I do some flat pattern measurements here and there. But with this one, it was harder to know because the waist isn't hitting the actual waist, it's up higher. So I did this based on experience, sort of empirically, because I know the brand and because I'm taller. If in doubt, just make a little bodice with a skirt piece and check where these heights are going to hit on your body. Now on the skirt pieces, I knew I wanted to add 2 inches to the length of the dress, otherwise it would end up a little short for me. So I added an inch on the first tee and I added an inch on the second tee just to keep everything proportional. This is a dress that's not going to take you 2 hours to sew. It's going to take you pretty much the whole day. It took me pretty much the whole day. Sewing relaxed, of course, it takes me triple the time because I'm filming some things. I'm not going to film everything in detail, but I'm going to show you the general construction, and I am going to show you the neckline in detail and also how to unite the bodice to the skirt plus that little facing there. So you'll still see a lot. You'll be able to do it for sure. It's not hard. It just takes a little while longer. So let's see. These are the pattern pieces for the bodice. I'm using this beautiful pink here. This is the back bodice. This one's cut on the fold. It's got a rounded neckline. This is the front bodice. This has a type of V shape there, but it's extended. It looks wider, and that's because that's going to be gathered. In this middle section, there's going to be a placket. Those are the placket pieces, 2 pieces. I've interfaced both of them. I did the block fusing method to interface them so that they don't lose their shape and size. This is the sleeve. Now this sleeve is going to be gathered from here to here. You have little marks there. And below that, you're going to have the single notch for the front armhole and the double notch for the back armhole there. The top one that will match the shoulder seam. This long piece that we have here is going to be a facing piece for the skirt. This is where we're going to have small casings to thread our elastic through, and that's what's going to bring in the waist. The bodice is above the waist. It's a shorter waist design, and that is the binding piece there for the neckline. Now I'm going to show you the skirt pieces. I'm sewing the option with the 2 tiers. That's going to end up with a dress just above the knee. You can add a 3rd tier there, and that ruffle would be longer. So instead of cutting 2 of the ruffle pieces on the fold, you would cut 3 to sew the 3rd tier. This one here is the one that's going to be attached to the bodice, and it goes wider over hip or the hip area. This is longer, of course, wider, because it's going to be gathered onto that section right. I have already done some preparation steps ahead. So the first thing I ever did was stay stitch the back neckline. This is rounded, and I stay stitched up to the center and then flipped it and then started from the shoulder again into the center. What I've also done is serge the shoulders and the sides. This is the back piece, and I've done the same with the front. And now the next steps have to do with gathering the front. So let me get the front bodice. This is the front bodice, this is the center, this is the neckline, the shoulders also serged, side seams also serged. Here you can see the marks to sew on the sleeves later. What we need to do now is the gathering stitches. So you see that further away from the center front there's a mark, and further down from the shoulders is another mark. That is the area that needs to be gathered. To be able to gather really nicely and neatly, I'm going to do 2 rows, one at 1/4 inch, and the second row is going to be 3/8 inch away from the edge. They're pretty close together, but it's going to help you gather nicely. So I'm going to do those 2 rows using a long stitch length. We did that double row to gather the neckline, and on this pattern piece that's for the binding, there's also these helpful little marks, 1 and 2. Now there's a few lines here because I'm blending between 3 sizes, but this is the size I want for my neckline, which is the 10 full bust. So I've drawn the little line right there. So that is my reference. You can see I had this line here, that's number 1, and then this is number 2. So all of this has to be gathered to fit into there, into that little space. Okay, that seems like the right distance. So keeping it curved, keeping that same shape, we're going to head over to the iron and we're going to use this little thing. This is something I cut at the beginning. It's 6 inches long or 15 centimeters, 1/4 inch wide fusible interfacing. And I'm going to fuse that right along the edge there on top, and that's going to keep this gathering in place without it moving. And then this is going to be covered by the binding, so the fact that it's white, it's not going to upset us. After pressing that interfacing onto the neckline, I've pressed it to the wrong side, by the way. I went ahead and sewed the shoulder seams. I've pressed them open as well there. That's why I like serging first. And then what I did was pin my binding, and I'm going to do it the reverse way, which is pin it to the wrong side. The binding is cut from the pattern piece exactly, and it's going to match the neckline. You're going to have a little bit left over there. And all you had to do was fold the 2 ends, meeting them in the middle. Let me unpin that like that. And that's how you get your binding. And we have that crease, and that's where we're going to sew now. What happens afterwards is that I bring my binding that's already sewn over to the right side, cover the seam allowance with the binding, and then top stitch, and then I don't have to worry about catching the back because it's already been sewn. So this is how I consistently sew most of my binding. Here I've got my binding hand basted on to the right side of the garment. I'm sewing on the edge very slowly and very neatly, trying to do it as straight as I can. And I don't have to worry about catching the binding on the back because that's already been sewn with the first seam that we did. So this is my favorite method. Once I'm done, I can trim away the tiny little bit of excess I have on each of the ends there. This is the binding from the wrong side, super neat. Remember there was interfacing in here, it's all been covered. It makes the neckline super stable and it made the gathers stay in place, so that's really neat. Now this front edge here is going to be finished with a placket. Super easy placket because the overlap of the placket is going to be done at the bottom here when we attach the skirt piece. These placket pieces are interfaced and I'm doing a guide stitch on one of the long ends, on both of them mirrored, so that we can fold that in at the iron. This is what I mean by mirrored, that the outer edges are both with the guide stitch all the way down. Now on this other side I used white thread on the bobbin, so it's going to be easy for me at the iron to just press this. Here are both the placket pieces with the outer edges pressed in. I've removed the guide stitch. I'm just going to put these aside and then bring back the neckline. This is right sides up, and this is the way that you're going to put the plackets. So taking them just as they are, that is how they're going to be pinned onto here. So we're going to align these right sides together along this vertical edge, having this folded edge towards the outer side of the garment, and we're going to pin them from the bottom up, and at the top we're going to have excess. There we are, both plackets pinned from the edge at the bottom going up, having a little bit of an excess there. On the top, the same on both sides, so it's symmetrical. This is the right side of the garment, and I have already finished one of the placket edges. I just want to show you what we're aiming for. The binding goes up to there, and flush against that same angle is we have this top finish of the placket. That's why the placket had that type of V shape on the top. That was folded back and top stitched. So I top stitch from the right side. I did hand baste this to catch everything on this side, and that is all. Now let me show you how we get to that. After sewing on the placket like that, what we do is we go to the iron and we press the seam allowance towards the placket over here. Then we fold this in half. There's actually a little line there, and on this little V shape, that's your other reference. And you're going to fold this over. Just going to cover that seam there and give it a good press. First, we have to finish this area that's still raw. So now we have to take this and fold it right sides together, making sure that crease is right in the middle right there, matching everything up. Easier to do from this side because we can actually see the binding right here. And this is where we want to sew now. We basically want to start there flush against the binding and just sew right there. It's about a 3/8 seam allowance. That's how much I had left over here on the top. So we'll get that sewn, and then when we flip it, it's going to be super neat. Okay, there you can see the little stitch. It's following the same angle that we have right there. And over here, we're going to have this excess that we need to trim away. And now we're going to flip this. So this, we have to just tuck it in. Just push it inside like that and then start pinning down. And if you know me, you know I'm going to be hand basting this before top stitching. Okay, there is the placket hand basted. This is the right side of the garment. You can see the nice little shoulder seam there. This is the wrong side of the garment. This is where the placket is open and loose, as you can see there. So we're sewing this traditionally. I could have done this the reverse way as well, but I did it as per the instructions. And now I'm going to sew nicely on the edge right there, nice and straight, hoping I'm going to catch everything here because I've hand basted it. Now that the plackets are done, I'm going to overlap them. Usually the right side overlaps over the left, just as it would be if you're doing buttonholes, but we're not doing that. So I've got them overlapped there, and I'm going to do a basting stitch right here. Okay, I've done a few things after basting the placket here at the bottom. This is the right side of the garment. I have sewn the side seams already, very short. Remember, this bodice is a little higher. It doesn't reach the natural waist. And then the other thing I did along the bottom of the front is do gathering stitches, 2 rows. Now, why? It's because I'm doing the full bust option. If you're doing the regular bust option, then this step is not going to be needed. At this point, we're going to set in the sleeves. I have already assembled my sleeve here. I've sewn the little seam. I've done even the hem. On the top of the sleeve cap, you have 2 marks there and there. Along the top from one mark to the other, I have also done 2 rows of gathering stitches there, long stitch length. And that's going to match what you see on the armhole. To see a more detailed tutorial on sewing a sleeve with a gathered detail on the sleeve cap, check this video. Another step I'm going to do is to sew the side seams of this first skirt piece. This is the skirt piece that's going to be attached to the bodice. It's not a rectangle. I'm going to place these 2 right sides together. You can see it's narrower on the top, wider at the bottom. This is what's going to be sewn onto the bodice after. So I'm going to get these 2 side seams sewn and pressed open so that that's ready as well. Okay, I've done a few things. In here is the bodice, and I have already set in the sleeves. And I have sewn the side seams of the skirt, as I said. And now what I've done is put the bodice inside the skirt so that they are right sides together here. This is the front, there are the plackets. Now the back fits 1-to-1, the bodice to the skirt. But remember, I'd done some gathering stitches to slightly gather the front onto the front skirt. So you can see it's very slight. These gathers won't actually be too visible at all. And remember, this is going to be elasticated later. So it's just to get the full bust piece bodice to fit the same skirt that the regular bodice would have. Now, the regular bodice would not have any gathers there. So at this point, I'm going to do a basting stitch. It's not the definite stitch. It's just going to hold these 2 layers together, and I'm going to do that with 3/8 seam allowance, longer stitch length. I've gone ahead and basted the bodice to the skirt with a 3/8 seam allowance, so it's together. We can set this aside, and now we have these 2 pieces. These are the skirt facings, they're called. They're rectangles. And what I've done with one of the long ends is fold it up to the wrong side. You can see that. 1/2 inch. I did a guide stitch all the way around. So that's done. Now on one of these seams, you sew it and press it open normal. Nothing different there. But on the other one, we're going to have something different. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine. As you can see, this side was sewn normal. Nothing different there, but this side has a few lines. Now you can do this on either side, it doesn't really matter. I just chose this side and I just marked dots. Now we're going to sew this in several stages. From the edge to the dot we're going to sew, but then this next section is going to be left open. Then we're going to sew again, then leave it open. Then we're going to sew again, then leave it open, and then we're going to sew again. Okay, that's done. Now from this side, you're going to see we have openings, 3 of them. I'm going to go to the iron and press this open, press that again, and then we're going to sew this to the bodice and the skirt. Now we have our bodice again with the skirt. We need the bodice looking up at us and the skirt tucked in there. That's how it needs to look. Now we're going to take this facing piece and put it right here. So we're basically going to have a facing, a bodice, and then the skirt. And the side seams are going to match the side seams of the bodice over here. Everything's going to match 1 to 1. And now this is when we're going to sew it on the round, but with a definite stitch at 1/2 inch right here.
Now I'm sewing this facing piece onto the unit that's composed of the bodice and the skirt. Make sure you're looking at the bodice right here.
That this facing is touching the bodice and that your skirt is under there. Sewing through 3 layers here at 1/2 inch. I'm trimming the seam allowance down to 1/2 so that it's less bulky at the waist area, so that it goes all the way around. This is the wrong side of the dress. Here is the bodice. This is the facing that we had sewn and I just flipped it over this way. So it's covering the side seam partially over here. It's very neat. This is the side that has the 3 openings, as you can see, for the elastic. This is the side that has just been sewn normal. And so that bottom edge that we'd done the guide stitch before, that's already there. I was at the iron, pressed it flat, hand basted it down while I was there. So we have all that edge stitching to fix this in place. You can see all these little lines with a friction pen. So from the bottom up, you need to measure 1/2 inch. From the top down, same. And then that's 1/2 inch too. So you're basically making marks every 1/2 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines that we have to draw. I drew them pretty close together. Now I'm going to fill in the gaps with my friction pen. And then I'm going to sew. So it's that edge stitch, then this one, then that one, and that one, all the way around the bodice. I think this is the part that could take a little while longer, though it's not hard because it's just straight seams. But I think this is super important because this first section here is going to have an elastic. This second section is not. This is going to have an elastic. This is not. And then this is going to have an elastic. So we're basically going to need 3 lengths of elastic to go into 3 small casings there. There it is. I went around and around and around. First the edge stitching, then that one, that one, that one, and that one. And now here on this side is where I have the 3 openings. 1, 2, 3 to thread my small elastic through, regulate, try on, and then close the elastic, push it back inside, and then these little gaps can be closed by hand. And then that's how this is going to become gathered. After this skirt piece, I didn't sew the side seams all the way down. I left it open for a couple of inches so that I can sew on the other tier, gather it there, and then once that's sewn, then I can finish the side seam. At the very end, we're going to try it on and we're going to sew this placket closed at the level that I'm comfortable with. I'm going to sew a square like this. I didn't show you setting in the sleeves. I do have a video that shows you how to set on sleeves, how to set in sleeves. I have a gathered feature here and a pleated feature. So those are technique videos I'm going to link for you. Anything that I find helpful, it's going to be down in the description box as well, because I can't be repeating the same thing over and over. But let's see my dress. You have already seen the pink in the tutorial. It's just so amazing. It's so bright. It matches me so well. This is one of my best colors. I've been told I have like a winter coloring, and I totally get it. I totally believe it. This is one of my colors. I love it. And here is the beautiful neckline with the binding. Remember that we fused a little bit of interfacing. I did that on the wrong side though, but you can't see it because it's all covered with the binding. Slightly gathered here in the front, this gorgeous placket over here. This is the last thing I did, try it on and then sew that little rectangle that you can see there that keeps it in place. These are the easiest sleeves to set in, easier than when you're trying to ease in and not get any gathers. This time you have the gathers there, so it's really, really easy. Here you can see the gathered section. 1, 2, 3 casings. Now the casing in the middle, I had problems with the elastic sort of getting stuck on the fabric. That tends to happen. It looks much smoother here on the back, but when I wear it, it looks absolutely fine. And this is what took the longest out of sewing the whole dress, was just marking the little lines, following my friction pen marks and sewing around and around and around. That took a while, I'm not going to lie, it took a while. I'm not going to time things when I sew, I'd rather not know. I just have that feeling that I was there for quite a while. And then threading the elastic through 3 times also took a while. Very worth it though, it's very pretty. And then we have the first tier of the skirt and the second tier of the skirt. Now I find that the gathering on the second tier is very slight. And I'm very happy it's like that with this fabric that's more structured. You see it's not going to stand away from the body too much. It looks absolutely fine. But if I was making this with a lighter, flowier fabric, I think I would widen that second tier. Just maybe cut it like 5 or 6 inches longer so that I can have a little bit more gathering if I was using a rayon or something like that. But for the cotton, I think it's absolutely fine. I did a tiny, tiny hem allowance, just 3/8 of an inch, just because even though I lengthened it and everything, when I tried it on, I thought, oh, I could have probably used another inch. So I didn't do a larger hem allowance, I did a very small one. And let me show you on the inside. I did do a lot of prep work before starting to sew, like serging all the edges of all the skirts and everything. Quite a bit of gathering stitches to do on the skirt. You know, sometimes I find doing those mindless tasks before starting the actual pattern is really helpful, because then you don't have to spend time on that when you're trying to concentrate on doing something more specific. So that is how it looks inside. The placket goes all the way over here, it's overlapped. Here is the casing and the elastic. It looks really neat on the inside. It's all very clean. My seams are pressed open. It's all very nice. I really enjoyed this. Now, I was thinking just now, I really want to make this again as a top. You know, a top, you can always do that when you have a dress. And I usually like making tops after sewing a dress, because then I can try this on for reference. I love this, it hits the waist. The bottom here is actually at my waist, the bottom of this elasticized area. So I would just probably leave about 6 or 7 inches here, and it would then look like a little peplum. I think that would be adorable. And if you wanted to simplify this and not do all the casings, I would sew the facing just the same. Inside here, you're going to have an opening of about 2.5 inches. I would just use a 2-inch elastic and just put it all in there, no casings, nothing. It would be just one elastic. It would be so easy like that. Just leave a gap, thread your elastic through, and then I would top stitch that elastic into maybe 2 or 3 rows, and it would end up looking very similar to this, only it would take maybe 2 hours less to do. I actually thought about that after doing this. I'm upset at myself for not thinking about it before, because I could have done that instead of the actual casings right here. The casings were okay. I'm just warning you that it can take a while. So that is something I'm surely going to do. This is so lovely. It looks so amazing here. The neckline is so, so pretty. And remember, you can regulate how deep you want that placket to be, or just put that little stitch above higher. It's all up to you, and it's so gorgeous. I'm going to show you this just on its own with some beautiful heels, and then with 2 toppers. Outfits all approved by my son, by the way, because he sometimes looks at me while I'm styling and he's like, I like that. So that means a lot to me. Anyway, let's see it on. This is my gorgeous Comillas dress from Itch to Stitch. This is a beautiful pink. The fabric is a linen cotton blend. This is a size 10 full bust, 12 waist, 14 hips. I added length to both skirt pieces so that it would reach above the knee, 1 inch each, and I really love the result here. This is a structured fabric, and it works really well because when we unite the bodice to the skirt, there's a gathered section there, so it sits close to the body. As you can see, the bodice is hitting underneath my bust. I did have to lengthen my bodice by 5/8 of an inch all the way around, front and back. And then we have this casing that is actually 3 little casings there, 3 rows of 1/4 inch elastic there. And at the bottom of that elasticated section, that is actually where my waist is. I'm quite high-waisted, so I really love the fit. I think it's amazing. The full bust option gives me a really good fit at the bust, and there's nice amount of space at the hips. This neckline is so lovely. It's gathered, it's round, it's got a placket, and at the back it's round as well. The top edge is finished with binding, super nice and neat technique. The sleeves are gorgeous. They are short sleeves, and there is some gathering there on the top of the sleeve cap. Not hard to do. It looks so striking on. However amount of time it takes you to do, it's going to be worth it. You can regulate how high you want that placket to be. At the bottom you can see I've stitched the close there. It's one of the last steps that you do, and I love how this looks. The fabric is a little bit sheer, so I do have a fitted slip underneath. I think that was necessary for this fabric, and I'm just really happy with it. Swapped my shoes and got a really light colored linen jacket. This is a ready to wear jacket, by the way. Beautiful, and I think it goes perfectly over the dress because the neckline is super simple. There's no collar, there's no lapel. It's really clean, just finished with a facing inside. So I feel that it gives you a nice open look at the dress underneath, and it doesn't compete with the beautiful details of the neckline. So I try to do that when I'm wearing something striking underneath. I try to keep the top part really simple. The dress is nicely fitted at the waist area, the midsection. I think I don't look boxy with a jacket on top. I like the combination here. It's really summery. This pink is everything. Here is something a little more casual that I think everyone can do. I love the combination of navy and pink, so I got my navy sneakers. This is the Atenas denim jacket, also from Itch to Stitch. I think it's a really beautiful outfit to go somewhere casually. And yeah, if you haven't made a denim jacket, you're missing out. This one's amazing. It's got cup sizes. I think the fit is amazing, and it can go over many of your wonderful dresses. So I love that for this dress. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. I'm happy I made the 2 tiers. There's a 3rd tier you can add. I think it just suits me best that it's a short length. Absolutely love it. That placket, easy to sew. Such a beautiful dress. I know this is something that's a little more involved, but it's so worth it. It's so beautiful. Sewing something like this just feels amazing. I felt like $1 million when I tried it on the first time. I saw how that neckline looked so amazing. Love the color, the fit, everything. And even though it's a process that's going to take a while longer, I think it's really well worth sewing something like this. Not everything has to be super fast and super easy. I always say these are the ones that make me the happiest, and I'm probably going to include this one in one of my happiest makes of 2024. I know it because I've been smiling the whole time, you know, partly due to the fabric choice. I love the pink. That made me super happy, but because I really enjoy the techniques and the process. It's all very nice. Remember that the Comillas dress is on sale 20% off through next Wednesday the 24th. Always find my links in the description box and the pinned comment. That's all from me. I'm just gonna go back home now. The flies and the bugs are starting to come at me right now. I'll see you soon, very soon, with something fun. Bye.